before as we begin, anybody have any questions on what you've done? Anything you'd like to say before we move forward? Is this doing okay for you? Is it you getting what you want? Would you like anything else? Anything I can do that could make it zip along better for you? And I'll try to do that if I can. Or so. Any comments on that? Anything? Everybody's cool?
Everyone, yeah, I'm cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cool. Sure. Why not? So, social ease. That's what we're up to today. What does that mean to you when I say social ease? Any thoughts? Barbara's smiling.
I'm thinking it's a different language.
It's
Burmese.
Burmese. It is. It's a socialese is a we just sometimes Allegra and I like a title. So we said, well, let's call this social ease. So it's it's how we ease ourselves through social situations. It's what we do to get by or to impress or to belong.
How about the grand subtext?
It's all about the subtext. Absolutely. It's all about the subtext. And so what are some of the expressions of social ease that you might identify? What would be some
Clothing,
clothing would be one? Sure. What else?
smiling mannerisms,
Yeah. Expressions.
Sense, the use of language.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
jargon.
Jargon, customs, rituals, almost, and I say social ease, but to expand that a bit, it's anything that we do
Communal.
as we interact with people. So in some ways, this is a political chapter, the politics of our interaction with individuals or groups of people. So how do you express yourself as your public face? What is it like when you are at home with your more private persona? All of those things get expressed. Now, how do you tell the truth with socialese? How do you lie with socialese? We are always talking about how much we value truth. We need to tell the truth. And yet it's worth thinking and doing an inventory on how many times do you lie? Does one lie have more weight than another? How many times do you shade the truth a bit or move in a direction that makes things go smoothly? And we'll be working with all of that as we go through this. Example in the book opening here is when you meet somebody and they're your new best friend and they throw their arms around you to give you a big hug. I'm not that enthusiastic about massive affectionate hugs from people I just met. I'm like, well, what are you doing draping around my neck here, for God's sakes? It's like we got to know you a little bit here. You know, is this person really my new best friend? No, it's something else. There's something else going on. So the reason why this is important, like all of the others, if you are working on a memoir, if you're trying to tell your story or not, but if you really are working on your own story, any one of these exercises, you could pick something in your life and build it out. Something, make it really personal, like the time when you closed your eyes and felt the room. Okay. Has there been time when your eyes were closed and you sensed something that you wished you hadn't, or sensed something that dazzled you? Okay. And yeah, you will always find something in your life that you can put to this. So we're going to get really specific here on the first prompt, eating together. This is the seed, the storm. So we're talking about eating. And what I would like for you to do, this is going to be very simple. I want you to take your time. We're going to do this for 5 minutes. I want you just to kind of reflect on food and don't think necessarily about the food that you love the most. If I if I had to go to the moon and only take one bit of food with me, I would take a watermelon. Now, I
Mhm.
don't know why, but I just love to eat watermelon. Guess it's
Mhm.
because it's so juicy and sweet. Okay. What does that mean as far as my life goes? What does that mean in terms of the needs that I have? Why do I want juicy, sweet watermelon in my mouth rather than a persimmon that's not quite right? I don't know. That's for me to decide. For you to do what you to do right now, I'd like for you just to start listing for 5 minutes, just casually, take it easy, just list foods. And don't try to list the favorite foods, just list foods that come to mind. This is an imaginative storm list like we do on Saturday. Just list foods. 5 minutes, off you go. You probably have a range on this list. You likely have a, a food that you just totally love. And then you might have a food that you absolutely hate. So both the food that you love on one end of the spectrum and the food you hate on the other end, each item you listed on this 5 minute list, you could circle it and write a story about it. The foods that I hate, I'm not that great an international traveler, and I'm not so big on the cuisines of the world, but I have bumped into a few things over the years. And some of the food I have just absolutely loved, but there's one particular story. I went out with some friends and we were going to go to this great restaurant and order this fantastic food from this fellow's country. And it came and I could not swallow it. It was
Mhm.
absolutely awful. Yeah, he was, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever had. So
Mhm.
my story is poor Nabe, like, what do I do now? Talk about socialese. This is really awful. I can't eat it, but how do I behave? And it was a little stressful, as you can see by me telling the story, because I'm wiggling my right foot, going, Jesus, what am I going to do? I felt like a little boy. So plenty of stories that are playing out in this. So with this list, which you can hang on to because it was a spontaneous list, but there's important things going on in there. So I'd like for you to choose one food on that list, one food. It could be something like the story about how bad the food tasted, or it could be the most delightful family affair you've ever had, like the chicken my grandmother baked after for Sunday dinner after church. We'd eat chicken and dumplings and green beans from the garden. Oh, delightful story. My grandfather's shotgun was leaning in the corner. Wonder what that's about. So pick one food on your list and write about the human connections that played out around that food in your life. And we'll take 10 minutes to do that. So just relax and think about the scenes that pop up around that food. I could go on at length about McDonald's chocolate milkshakes. How about you? You've got 10 minutes to do it. You're off. So you picked a food and you wrote a little story about it in 10 minutes. What were some of the emotions that came up when you were generating this, working with this memory, this little story? Did you feel anything that surprised you? Uh, how was that food used as a dialect in Socialease? What was it all about?
Mm.
Katie,
Courage and creativity.
say more.
Well, I remembered there was a woman who by the name of Rita who we were fortunate enough to have cook for us when I was small, living in when we were in Yugoslavia. And she was, very simple means, but she was a really, really gifted cook.
Mm.
And my mother sensed that and knew that she also could read. Um, and so she ordered the joy of cooking for her in Serbo-Croatian.
Oh my.
And so my mother presented it to her, this huge tome. And and Rita was sort of like, just she was very big and very roly, and she would sort of, shy and embarrassed and didn't quite know what it was, because she had her bag of tricks and all of her recipes, but my mother thought that would be a wonderful thing for her to explore. So she found a recipe that she was excited by the look of for chocolate souffle. And so it was really just about her constantly coming up with these extraordinary feats of culinary magic. But that was the one that I remember most vividly, um, because she kept on opening the oven door, which you're
Oh
not
my,
supposed
what
to
a
do when you make a souffle. And we all saw her doing it, but we couldn't tell her what to do because she was like, she read the instructions and it said not to do it, but she was like, she couldn't contain her excitement, I guess, at the scent of it and the look of it. So she was like a little girl, And of course, we finished the meal and she's timed it perfectly so she can kind of bring out this spectacular thing to the table as we're finishing lunch, and just the excitement of this little, I was like a little girl, she's bringing it to the table, and the excitement of watching us eat it, and then my father insisting she try it and have some and sit with us, and yeah. So that's my memory of that particular dish.
and we're so glad you told it. Here's a little note for all of you. If you happen to think you'd like to do a moth story slam, become tell a true life story, and lots of moth story slams are all over the place. You can enter them. You can pick a story like this. Anything that we've done up to this point, you can take that and turn it into a spoken word story, just like Katie did. No problem at all. Just tell it like it happened. So there's a lot of material just sitting there. Anybody else have a reflection before we move to the next thing? Anything else that happened? Something surprised you? I know Dragon Rose was grinning the whole time. Wendy, I think you have a smile on your face. What do you have to
Yeah,
say?
I was really tickled because I wrote about red beans and rice, and in New
Ah,
Orleans,
Mm,
yeah, that was a huge Monday tradition. So it
mm,
reminded me, it brought me back to doing the wash on Mondays and the fights my brother and sister would have over the TV, and my mom standing there getting all the stuff ready. And it was just really fun to go back. I mean, without this, I wouldn't have thought of that today for sure. So it
right,
was
yeah.
really fun. Yeah, so thank you. That was good.
And people have to gather around, but not necessarily. You could have. I remember once I did an eagle sit. They were hacking golden eagles at Sam's patch up in way up in the mountains in western North Carolina. My friend Andrew Brown and I sat the eagles for 4 or 5 days, and every evening we would go down to this tiny little camper trailer, and we had just fruits and vegetables. We didn't have much to cook, but we would slice those pieces of fruit and the tomatoes up and eat one at a time like it was the most gourmet thing we'd ever had. And our plates
mm.
were just paper napkins.
Yeah.
And now Andrew's celebrating his birthday. He's 2 years older than I am, 77. He has Alzheimer's. He's forgetting everything. I
Mm.
doubt he remembers that. Who knows? So there's lots of activity that can go on, and everything that you identify, all the foods, and you put the people around the table, people you know or people you just met. You can have conflict, you can have love, hatred, politics, joy, anticipation, all in 1 hour, all around whatever's on the table. So, anything else? Dragon Rose, you want to make one comment and then we'll move on?
Oh, I not necessarily. I was laughing because somehow this memory just made me giggle. I was talking about how my mom used to make chicken soup every Wednesday because it was fasting and prayer Wednesday until after the uh after the Bible study, and my dad would fast all day, and then we would all eat this chicken soup, but all of us hated it. I mean, I didn't say my dad hated it, but like all of the kids like really hated it and dreaded it. And my dad would give us a deadline by which to finish the soup. And like if we didn't finish the soup in a certain amount of time, we would get spanked. And my older sister, she could never finish the soup. She would like sit there. I have like this very distinct memory of seeing her just sit there with her cheeks like full of the thing. Like she was there and like her whole face was like just like scrunched up in such agony, and she just couldn't make herself swallow it. So she would get spanked and she would have this whole entire like going on and on. But like I was like, why are you making it so hard? Just shove it down your throat. It's awful, but just like gag it down like really fast. Like I would just like shovel it down really, really fast so that I wouldn't get spanked, and like taste as little of it as I possibly could. And I was just like wondering in this, like, well, as I was writing, like, does it taste any different if it's like sitting there moshed up in your cheeks than it does from than it does if you just swallow it and get it over with?
Wow.
That sounds like a metaphor for something. But anyway, like that was making me giggle.
Wow. Wow. Great.
So they're two great spoken word stories right there, just told off the cuff. So it's quite easy to do that. And I encourage you to write these up. Keep thinking about everything that you do. Look at the list of foods, say everything in here. I could create a scenario around it. You could spend 2 months just working with that list of foods you have, and you could have an entire small book to publish just on how all of these foods interact with you. The pizza restaurant I owned when I was in my 20s, and served pizza to the people going to the beach, to Wrightsville Beach, and how I sliced the pepperonis and they were always too thick, but I didn't care. Okay. Food. Around the table, when you were having the food, if you put people around the table, maybe you were eating solo, I don't know, but when you've gathered for a meal, you are gathering with a group of people. Some you know close, some are very close, some are maybe strangers. Sometimes the meal is formal. You've been invited to the grand ball, or it's just a couple of friends having a one-off breakfast at some diner somewhere. You can do a lot with a Waffle House, let me tell you. They're going to be butter, as the woman always tells you, even if you don't want it on your grits. If you're in the South, she'll say, I don't care. They're going to be butter. They're going to have butter on that because we don't get anything else. That's a song my buddy Walter Parks wrote. You gathered around the table. That's a tribe. You are included in the dinner. You have been invited. Come, have a meal with us. Break bread. So this next prompt, an initiation into a tribe. So I'd like for you to, just like we did with the food, take 5 minutes and think about the tribes you have belonged to, the tribes you wanted to belong to and didn't get in, the tribes you wanted to belong to, and surprise, surprise, they let you in, the tribes that you've been involved with over your life. What are those tribes? Take 5 minutes and list the tribes. And this can be very personal. It can be almost anything. So I'll give you 5 minutes, and then after that, we'll work with tribes instead of food. But food overlaps with tribes. So off you go, 5 minutes. List tribes. Into a tribe, or maybe rejected. That's a decisive moment. You have a lot of needs. I want to belong. I have a need. I like to be invited and to a party, to a dinner. There are some groups of people that I want to belong with, but I don't get invited. Other groups, I'm really pleased when they invite me to come to dinner. I have that in my life right now. There are a couple of groups I'd like to be included in, and I'm just, for some reason, I'm not. And when I'm not included, it makes me wonder and doubt what's wrong with me, or why is this not happening? What's going on here? So we have both sides of that. So what I'd like for you to do now is to take a look at your list of tribes, and this is one where you actually get accepted into the tribe. So we want you to pick one of the tribes and write for 10 minutes on how you were accepted into that tribe. Now, an example of this would be, and this can be very, very broad. We have a woman friend of ours, Allegra and I. She lives in Taos. She used to like to ride around on a kind of a small motorcycle. No big deal. She's cruising around on her motorcycle, and suddenly she comes upon a group of Harley Davidson hogs with large men on them. She's puttering along, and somehow she thinks she's going to be overrun by this group. But what actually happens is somehow they manage with a motorcycle dance to include her in the group for a brief moment.
Oh.
And when she got included in the group, they gave her the thumbs up. And that's when she knew she was a member of the Harley Davidson tribe, even though she was riding a somewhat motor scooter, 250cc Yamaha or something. So that was her story about being included. And she stretched it out quite a bit. So you can do anything you want with this, but pick a tribe that you were included in, and then write a story for 10 minutes about how that happened, the tension you had. Am I going to get in? Sororities are awful with this. You have to go through all of these initiation rites, and maybe there's some initiation going on. What got you in there? How did that all work? So you have 10 minutes to do that, and that 10 minutes is now. See you in 10. Off you go. And when you get your last sentence written, come off mute, return to visual. Okay, tribal members. How do you feel now?
Good.
Do you belong? Or did you get kicked out? Or what happened? Any insights? We're going to move to the James list, and then after that, we'll take a break and keep on going. So, anything happen? Katie.
You realize how stressful it is wanting to become part of a group.
Oh
When I
my
was
God.
little, it was so scary and upsetting being a teenager and wanting to be. I was a skateboarder in England when I was a little girl, and it was so dangerous. But I was like, I didn't mind. It was like it steeled me. It kind of it it gave me it gave me something to overcome that was almost more harrowing than being a part of the tribe.
Well, it's interesting because skateboarders, climbers, people that
Mm,
do dangerous things, you really want to be a member of a tribe that could get you killed.
right,
You don't think of it
exactly.
like that. I really want to
Yeah.
race motorcycles at 200 miles an hour. Gee, can
Well,
I get in?
I think there was a sort of kind of death wish because I did end up having several bad accidents, one of which I
Hmm.
was in a coma for 3 days. So it ended up being the end of my skateboarding journey. But yeah, it was really interesting what that, need was.
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful, beautiful thought. What was the need? So we're not going to work too much with needs, but we will work with needs a little bit later. But
Yeah.
what drives all this, and why is it so important? Anybody else? I'd love to hear from Barbara.
I didn't know that I was actually part of this group.
Mhm.
Oh, eh, so you do know now. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Did you remember? So if you didn't know you were part of the group, could you remember when you became part of the group?
That's what this was all about.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you didn't know, but then now I know I've identified what gave me the green light to say, yes, you were a member of this.
Didn't know I was such a cliche. Mhm.
Well, we don't have that exercise. It'd be interesting to add an exercise. List all the times in your life when you have been a cliche, and tell the story around that. And God knows we all have been. I suspect. Um, Anybody else
I
experience? Let's
guess
see.
I went looking for my tribe. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go, Sue.
I
Go.
was
We're
just going to
with you.
say, well, I just had a hard time with tribes because I've always stayed away from
Mhm.
groups
Mm.
and had to sort of go back to, I suppose, being a teenager and being at school. And I was always the weird one, sort of the sort of freak in Northern England. And I had all these wants and needs. So
Ah.
the need to try and find my tribe, which I knew wasn't around me, propelled me to leave my country and find my tribe in another country, in another place,
Did you
because I
succeed?
knew
Go ahead.
where I came from at that particular time. That wasn't my tribe all around me.
Right.
So
Did you succeed at finding your tribe? Or do you feel like
sort
it?
of,
Okay.
but I've got to a place kind of now where I don't long for groups or acceptance at all. It's not, I don't care. No, I find it interesting. I just wrote, I never wanted to be in a tribe. Tribe to me means sheep, a group of people all collectively longing for acceptance. I don't care if I'm accepted or not. I don't
Mm.
know. Maybe I'm all.
Like your husband is a
I
jazz
don't
player,
know.
so when you go into his world, which you go in and out of, that tribe of jazz players
Blues,
accepts,
actually.
oh, blues players. Sorry,
Okay.
I have to keep this correct. The blues players, that tribe will accept you into their group at least for a while. So you have an entree into that group of his blues player friends, I would think.
Necessarily. Well, it's very, I don't know. I don't even think about it.
Right,
You know, I'm
exactly. Yeah.
I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I found this very, very hard. Apart
Well,
from going back to when I was a teenager, and I had more of a need for acceptance.
right. So the story for you would be, I don't need this. I don't care about tribes. I'm doing this on my own. And then would love to hear your approach to interacting throughout life without the need to belong to a tribe. I don't need to be a member of the club. I don't need to be a member of the community. I genuinely don't care. Then the question then comes up, what do you belong to that you care about? Like you belong to your family.
Yeah, my immediate husband and son,
Exactly. That's
and my
that's
best
a
friend. I guess I have like close relationships, but
exactly.
groups.
Exactly.
It's not my. I don't know.
Yeah. Where do I
I,
belong?
I'm more. I belong to the misfits and the freaks.
Okay, there's your tribe.
And the
There you go.
okay.
Yeah, that's it. And you might not ever see them, but they're there. Like bird watchers belong to the tribe of bird watchers. But bird watching is a rather singular thing, even though you're bird watching with others, your view of the birds always are different. Katie, you're up, and then we'll move on if to the James list if we. But thanks, Sue. We're finding location for you, Katie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not so much, yeah, it's not so much about volume, or it's a connection. It can be a tribe of two.
Hmm.
So a tribe starts, with two, and it doesn't have to necessarily get any bigger, I don't think. Um, so it's like, what do you feel a part of?
That's the question.
And
Yeah. What do you feel a
yeah,
part of?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the other thing that I was thinking is that it's not necessarily something that you are necessarily consciously seeking to be a part of, so much as something you recognize you are a part of when there's acknowledgement from without. So, like there's been occasions in my life where I've been published. Like I got published when I was a skateboarder, and I didn't
Mm.
try to do it. I didn't know it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden I was in a magazine skateboarding. So all of a sudden I realized I was part of that tribe, you know, but I wouldn't necessarily have been able to articulate that in the same way that, you know, when I was, as I'd been a designer, you know, all of a sudden I was published, and all of a sudden, you know, then all of a sudden you become like a part of the bona fide community because there's that outside acknowledgement. So I think there's different ways of looking at it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The thousands and thousands of ways to look at it. And the point is, however you're looking at it is a good place to start in telling the story that you want to tell. It's legitimate to look at it in any way you please. Good example. Recently, somebody reached out to Allegra. A public relations fellow said, "Oh, we've identified you as somebody that we think needs more attention in the world. And this is a PR character that's pretty serious, right?" And so they engaged with Allegra and picked her up as a new client. And they produced recently, last week, they put out, and this went out to like thousands and thousands of outlets, right, all over the country, this PR letter about what we're doing right here. Yeah. And it really got a lot of attention. People really looked at it. The analytics were great. And Allegra said, "Gosh, I had no idea I had no idea. I might be known," she said. She had no idea. Like, gee, I didn't know. And I said, "You might be." So she's a member of a tribe she didn't know she was a member of, which is the tribe of the known. Now, is that true? We don't know. But there's another example of, so her entry point into that tribe was this guy calls up out of the blue and says, "Hey, let's work together." And off they go. Maybe nothing will come of it. That's a story too. Oh my God, we thought we were known, and then we discovered we weren't. Or we discovered we were. It doesn't matter.
The thing is, there's no turning back.
Exactly. And here we are
So
at the
be careful what you wish for.
yeah. Well, and we're at that poem, the great poem, "The Road Not Taken." You know, the two roads diverge. You take one, you can't go back to the other one. Both roads were equally trod. There's nothing special about either one. It's just that what makes it special is you went down one and you didn't go down the other. And years later, you're telling the story with a joy or a sigh. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood. I took the one less traveled by because I considered the other one first. Here we are. You can't go back. So let's do the James list, and then we'll take a break. This is a little 5 minute breather. Social customs that you love. I want you to take 5 minutes, and I want you to list social customs that you love. Like, for example, the French greeting of a kiss on each cheek, roadside crosses that decorated with plastic flowers, making the place where marking the place where someone died, holding the door for a stranger, or the way you hail a taxi in Cairo, or dancing with your dad at Christmas. Social customs that you love. Just 5 minutes. Make that list. Little breather time. Here you go. 5 minutes. And then come off mute. Come back on the visual. So before we take our break, just to sorbet our moment with a little festivity, I'd like for each of you to read only 3 items from your list. And this is, I wish you could read the whole list, but in keeping it within our time frame, let's just hear 3 items from your list. And Heather, let's start with you, and we'll go to Dragon Rose and then Mary. Heather, 3 items from your list.
So one of them was greetings. Like in Pakistan, when you greet somebody, you put your hand over your heart. Or in Thailand, when you greet somebody, you bow. And I love how the kind of way the traditions around greeting. My husband's from Argentina, and they have a tradition of drinking mate every morning. And well, Usually abe is a type of tea that you drink together, and it's a very social drink. And so I love the whole custom around that. And cookie making. I love my family. I have a very big family. And every year, my mom and all her sisters get together to bake cookies for Christmas. And I love that.
Fantastic. Yeah. In Manila, they do the same thing. The guards will, like, if you do
Yeah.
this, when it's like having a magic wand, just works
Mhm.
with it. Even for people that have no idea what you're up to, they love that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love it.
yeah. Dragon Rose, how about you? And then Mary. 3 from your list, please. Come off mute, please, Dragon Rose.
Kissing on both cheeks. The Malayalis that I grew up with, that's what they would do. That's how they greeted each other. Friendsgiving and prayer pipes passing around.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that too. Mary, and then Dar, and then Barbara. Mary, come off mute and give us 3 from your list, please.
From my mother, always took a hostess gift wherever she went when she was invited.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet, respect for quiet in a theater. And the other one, I don't know, but I'm always so pleased when people at a traffic intersection obey the traffic laws and are kind to one another.
Beautiful. Do not come to Manila. Uh, Thank you, Mary. Dar, what about you? 3 from your list, please.
Every Sunday, my mother and my father and myself would go to someone's house for dinner, and we'd always stop for Kaiser rolls at the same bakery for as long as like 20, 30 years until the bakery went out of business. But it was like, we're going to go get the rolls. And that was like so important to bring the rolls to the party. Receiving and giving greeting cards, it was very big in my family. God forbid I forgot a Valentine's Day or somebody's birthday or Halloween even. And we would write letters to each other and send them. And I also was a great letter writer to all of my friends throughout my life. And another one is sitting in a kitchen as a teen with my mom's group of girlfriends, and it sounded like a hen house with them squawking and laughing. And I would just sit there and feel like I was in the middle of a nest.
Ooh, how sweet.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Barbara, what do you have then, Wendy? And then we'll go with Martin, Sue, and then Katie. Barbara, please.
Finding a note in a book that somebody else has previously read.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Bringing hot dish for illness or mourning period. Do y'all know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Anything with cream of mushroom soup. And then this is kind of old-fashioned, but letting somebody know that it's snowing down south.
Ooh, that's fantastic.
Do you know what that means, Nave?
I do not know what that means, Barbara.
What that means is your slip is showing.
I wouldn't.
Not bad.
No, I mean, I did host some of my Artist Way workshops as Nadine the drag queen, but I never wore a slip, so I wouldn't know that. God, but I do recall now, vaguely remember that. I do remember that now. Yeah. It's snowing down south. Your slip is showing. Oh my gosh. Wendy, what do you have for us?
Special customs for me is Mardi Gras king cakes. We would always have Mardi Gras king cakes. And being in marching bands, either for football games or parades, it was a big custom. And watching men continue to open doors for women. I think that's just a nice thing.
Yeah, beautiful. That ends up a lot on the list. Martin, what about you? 3 from you, please.
Okay, when I'm out walking, I always wave at other walkers or some kind of acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wave to drivers while I'm walking. And I think that's kind of a nicety, but I also want to make sure that they know that I'm there.
Fair enough.
And let's see, the last one. People seem to always be able to form a line when entering a door when there's many people trying to get in through a door. Lines almost always form immediately. People in. It's kind of a custom.
Okay, very good. And the murmuration of people. Sue, how about you? And then Katie, you close it.
3, let's see. The unspoken rule of taking it in turns to buy a round of drinks at the pub in England. This round's on me. Being given hot hand towels at a Japanese restaurant before the meal. And also Japanese, following the cherry blossoms blooming on the news in Japan.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. And Katie, close us out.
Keeping the elevator door open for someone. Standing to the right so people can walk up and down the escalator on the tube in London. And the silence between movements during a live symphony performance.
Fantastic. So thank you all for this. One of the things that I love when I get to this part here is the details. It's impossible to make these lists without including some really terrific details, very minute things. So when you're working on your pieces, remember it's just fine to put in a whole bunch of details. You can always take them out, but it's really fun to put them in as well. And it just gives it power. Anybody have a thought before we take a break on what you heard? How did it make you feel? I wanted to do all of those. I liked everything. I always get really optimistic when I hear these lists. And it's not snowing down south right now that I know of. So why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll come back and do one last prompt, and then we'll do our reading. So see you all in 10.
What's the saying down south for if you have toilet paper stuck to the bottom of your shoe when you walk out?
I don't know.
There's got to be something.
There's also one for if your fly's open.
Okay.
You're low flying traffic or something.
Think about it on the break.
The barn door's open.
The barn door is open. Yeah.
That's one. And the other one is XYZ, which unfortunately I have to say to my boss far too many times.
Oh dear.
XYZ. Okay. We'll see you all in 10. Think of some other things. Heather, Tish, and I might come to Bangkok at some point, and if we do, I'll let you know, and we can have a dinner or something.
Do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That would be lovely.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Not sure if we're going to do it or not, but she has a bunch of friends in Bangkok, so we might pop
It's actually
over.
getting really nice. It was super hot until about this week, and now it's starting to. It's still hot, but it's not as grueling.
Yeah, you get a little bit of that here too. It's still hot, but the mornings are terrific. Go out in the morning early and walk around, and I go about 5:15 and go for a couple of hours just walking and reciting and memorizing and dictating essays or whatever I please. I've given up hand writing. I do write longhand. I don't write much on the computer anymore.
Oh, is that what you do? You just recite into the phone? And do you have a program that then transcribes for you?
You have notes. on the iPhone. You just hit the little microphone and it just transcribes it. And then I take all of that and put it into Chat GPT and ask Chat GPT to organize what I've said. Keep it verbatim, but organize it. So, and then give it a heading. So then I can look at it, and Chat GPT will take out, like if I repeat something 2 or 3 times, it takes it out. Whatever you tell it to do, it'll do. So
Yeah.
But sometimes the repetition is the beauty of it.
well, yes, that is true. And I know when there's beauty and when I'm just flubbing along. Believe me, I know. It's like, so yeah, I'm not going for art. I'm just going for organization with it. But it's really interesting. Only problem is I do so much of it that I don't know what to do with it now that I have it. And I'm not very good at
editing.
I'm not very good at typing. I'm good at the keyboard. I might have said this before, but because it's so something about it, my thinking bogs down. I can't think and type. It doesn't work for me. But I can just talk and I have no problem with that. So it's just a style thing, really. And I also am a little bit dyslexic, maybe a lot dyslexic. So I get confused if I have to be too confined. I just can't think. It doesn't work for me.
Cramps your style.
It certainly seems to. So there you go.
Nave, when you do the dictation into the notes program, do you have to say the grammar, or does Chat GPT put that in for you?
Oh, I like the dictation on the notes. I give you an example of it just with this right here. Here's when I do the dictation with my voice into notes, comma, I do it because I can, period. It makes me feel liberated, comma, like a wild stallion unrestrained across the great plains where no barbed wire exists, period.
Got it. Perfect.
There it is.
There you
And
go.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
flying along with my little vision of documentary film. It's like watching a movie. And
Yeah.
I'm just reporting on, oh, there's a horse running across the field and there's no barbed wire. So there would be a time without and I just say it.
Yeah, that's cool. And
And
then what do you do with it all? Do you put it in files or something?
and then after I say it like this, I put it in files. And when I put
Yeah.
it into the file, I also will ask Chat GPT to clean it up, period. And then after I ask Chat GPT to clean it up, I go back over it and then work it more rigorously, period. And the rigor is what makes the form on the page. But that comes after I speak like I am doing now, period.
Very good. Thank you.
End of text.
Great.
There it is. Some people might say that's not writing. And I will say, yeah, that's exactly right. It's not. It's just free form, but it will eventually be identified as something I have written because it'll show up in form on the page like this.
I think, it's interesting. I think people have this perception of writing as an activity when in fact, if people don't know what the process is, it doesn't really matter because as long as it ends up being words on a page, it's written.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, how it gets to be written isn't necessarily an issue.
It can be whatever your style is. Some people, like Allegra, can't do anything but sit down and work with a computer. If she does anything else, it throws her off.
Right, exactly.
I'm the opposite. Does one have more credibility than another? In the world of writers, the MFA world, which is a more confined, have the requirements sometimes seem more confined. You have to do it this way or it's not writing.
Well, that's about
this is how it's done. Otherwise it doesn't count. And
we're just stringing words together.
Yeah, at this point in my life,
a different form.
Yeah.
But it's all putting the words together.
Yeah. I'm after the vibe and the feel. And then something comes from that. And if somebody responds well to it after it's written and put out on the circle community or wherever it goes, I'm happy with that. I am in no way discounting the rigor. It takes a hell of a lot to get to, this kind of stuff.
Right.
It takes a lifetime to get to this, but it's all going on in the whole universe of the body. It's not just happening on the page. The page is a result of that, which is what we're doing now. We're exploring this in lots of different ways. Let's finish out with one more exercise. This is called defining word or catchphrase. You have been in your tribes. You have been at dinner. You have been walking along, waving at people so they don't run over you. You have been having all kinds of experiences, remembering all these things. In groups of people, you have catchphrases. Like in Taos, something happens, they go, oh, it's Taos. You can go to a lot of places. I know I went to Senegal one time. Oh, it's Africa. Just expect things to happen but you don't know why it happens, right? There was one woman in one of our groups. She worked on fancy yachts, very wealthy billionaire people. And, in a fancy yacht, somebody might go like, gee, I want to get 100 Rolexes delivered tomorrow morning for my breakfast that we're going to have because we're docking in such and such a dock. I want to wrap those Rolexes up and give them to all my friends. People on the boat would say, we can do it. Somehow they managed to get those Rolexes to the party within 12 hours. Could you always make it happen? No, but that was the defining word or catchphrase. We can do it. So what I'd like for you to do is to think of defining words or catchphrases. And often there's a term called a shibboleth. And a shibboleth is a defining word or catchphrase that lets people know that you belong to the group. It comes from years ago uh, uh, in what is now Israel. Two tribes are fighting it out, and one tribe wins and the other tribe loses, and there's a river they have to cross, which is probably Jordan. And so the stragglers come home after the battle, and the guards posted will ask them to say shibboleth. Shibboleth was a seed. And the way the tribe pronounced that word, shibboleth, told the guards they were an actual member of the tribe. But if they couldn't pronounce it, then they were killed because the guards knew they were not a member of the tribe. In North Carolina, in Asheville, if you say, I'm from Leicester, that means that you were born in that area. It's a little road that goes out into a community. I'm from Leicester. I was born in Leicester. But if you say, I'm from Leicester, I live in Leicester, that cues the locals that you are a late arrival and that you are not a native, but you're pronouncing it the way you think it should be pronounced. I'm from Leicester. But the locals will say, I'm from Leicester. So right away, that's a shibboleth. Other shibboleths would be, and some of them are not true. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is a shibboleth. The only thing that stays in Vegas is your money. What happens in Vegas goes home with you, whether you like it or not. Okay. Or another shibboleth in Asheville and other towns, you'll see signs on the doors of restaurants. All people are welcome. And then they list all the people, welcome, this group, that group, this one, this one, this one. That's a lie. If it's a very liberal sign, if Donald Trump showed up and wanted to have a staff meeting in the restaurant, he and his crew might not be welcome. Hell's Angels drives up, walks in. Would they be welcome? I don't know. So it may or may not be true. So the catchphrase, the defining word or catchphrase is what allows you into the group. So what I'd like for you to do is just take 2 minutes and think of some catchphrases that pop right on the top of your head and jot those down. And then we'll move into the timed writing. So here you go. Okay, 15 more seconds. And wind it up. We only had 2 minutes to do this. You could take 10, you can take 5. And as you think about this, and I encourage you to do that, think of other catchphrases that exist. Like a catchphrase here in Manila. Tish's brother-in-law, Paco told me, I said, "Oh, Paco, I just don't know what to do with this town." And he said, "Manila is an acquired taste. You have to acquire it." And it is true. And it's taken me quite a while to understand what he means, but I do get it now. That would be a catchphrase. Manila is an acquired taste, and it's heavy with judgment, and lots of subtext is baked into that. The judgment is, this is a shitty town. I don't know if I'll ever get over it. Okay. And then suddenly you're going like, well, wait a minute. That's kind of interesting. Maybe it's not so shitty after all. So these catchphrases carry a lot of meaning. So what I'd like for you to do now is to pick one of those catchphrases that you have identified, circle it, and write for 10 minutes on how that catchphrase plays out in your life, or how it has played out, how it's set a tone, how it's allowed you to come into a group. Maybe you're in the tribe now because somebody says something to you. So think about how that plays out and take 10 minutes and write a story about how that catchphrase plays throughout your life. Okay, off you go. All right, my friends. Now you have one of the things I love about this is there's a lot I love about facilitating these. I could go on and on forever about it, but I do like the idea starting 2 hours ago with blank page, and now you have brand new stuff that never existed before. It was not even in the world, and now it's here. And now we're going to move to. I'll give the Surf the Storm assignment after we finish the reading, but choose one and let's hear it. And I don't know what you'll choose, but I'd like for you to tell us, which exercise it comes from, so we'll have a reference for that, so everybody will be able to connect in with that. And who would like to pick one and read? Anybody?
Sure, I don't mind.
Okay, Sue's going to take it away. Off you go, Sue. Sue starts, and then let's go with Katie, and then Martin after Katie. Sue, what do you have for us?
This was the first one that you asked us to do about a food.
The food. Okay, we're going with food. Thanks, Sue.
Food. Greasy chips wrapped in a British newspaper, then sprinkled with salt and vinegar. Placed on Nanny's blue formica table like a crown, and we would all pick at them like pigeons. Granddad, Dad, my sister, Linda and me. That greasy fried smell, the used newspaper from another day, sometimes with the picture of a queen, would unravel as we pulled at our chips off of her royal face, covered with splotches of grease and vinegar. I got a strange delight seeing the queen's greasy face under our fried chips. What a treat it would be, our chips from the chippy. I think that chippy is still around, at least. When I went back to Old Spartan for Nana's funeral, I stopped at it for a serving of them. For old time's sake. Over 10 years now, my grandmother and her bright red lipstick and scarves tied and tucked under her chin like a working class queen. I don't remember Nanny eating the chips, just my granddad, my sister, and myself. Tart vinegar and the salty, greasy fried potatoes, gobbling them up. Sometimes we'd get a battered sausage on the side, a sausage covered in a thick batter, then deep fried. but it all changed after Granddad had his massive heart attack. He came out of the hospital tired and drawn. I don't remember us ever having fish and chips from the chippy again. That's it for now.
Beautiful. Notice how the don't remember played a little bit of a role to close it out. Well done. Thank you. Details, details, my friends. Very good. Katie, what do you have? Then Martin, you're on deck.
This is the one that I mentioned about the cookbook.
Okay. Oh, right.
Food.
Yeah.
Rita thumbed through the enormous tome that sat on the kitchen counter. My mother had ordered The Joy of Cooking in Serbo-Croatian so she could share the encyclopedic array of dishes with her. Rita was gifted beyond words, and sensing this and knowing she could read, it seemed like a fitting gift. Who knew that in 1972 that it had been translated? Rita found the recipe for chocolate souffle, which she liked the picture of, and was fascinated by its bravura performance potential. And so she set about finding the ingredients in the kitchen. And what was missing, she asked Susanna, the German neighbor, whose pantry was always stocked. Alongside the lunch she was preparing, the souffle was in process, and despite the clear instructions to keep the oven door shut at all times, Rita couldn't resist the temptation to open it and inhale the cocoa fragrance seeping out, and closed her eyes as she watched it slowly rise. And then, as the meal was being eaten, she continually turned to the oven window to time it all so she could carry it to the table as the lunch plates were being cleared. Rita's walk to the table, with her oven mitts cradling the souffle dish, was measured and excited, barely able to contain her excitement. No amount of tasting the batter could determine whether the mixture would indeed rise to the occasion, but it, like Rita, always did.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Thank you. What a scene. Glad you read that because you told the story. Notice how the telling and the writing overlap and combine forces to create two different forms, telling exactly the same story. We have range, my friends. Martin, then Wendy, Barbara, Dar, Mary, and Dragon Rose can close. Martin, what do you have?
Okay, I'm gonna do a catchphrase.
Okay, good.
It's out of our hands. This phrase was mouthed to a woman at the Mexican border. She was searching for her husband, who had been a bit ahead of her in the line. He was allowed to speak to the border officials for 30 minutes in a small room made of cinder blocks. And after that time, she approached another border official to inquire about the outcome of her husband's fate. And after searching the room and the area around it with no evidence of her husband, she began to lose her temper with her language and attitude. And at some point, she flat out accused the border officials of kidnapping her husband. And after much back and forth between her and the officials, one that seemed to be in charge came over to her and stated emphatically, "It's out of our hands." So now, where was he? She could not see him, and there was no one that knew where he was. At least none admitted that they knew. Her husband had just disappeared at the border with no trace, and she just did not know what she could do about it. And her husband had all of the money, and now she had none.
Damn.
Yikes.
I don't know if I want to say thank you or not, but well told. Wendy, what do you have?
Okay, mine is about tribes, and I wrote about me and my tribes. My first tribe was when my mom married my stepdad. I was just a toddler, When I called him Daddy for the first time, I'm told it was so special to him and even to my older sister, so much so that she followed in my footsteps and also started calling him Daddy. This was my first and favorite tribe, small and quaint, just the four of us, for just a little while. And as soon as it grew with three more kids born into our little tribe, it was still special to me. Even today, we are all a tribe and love each other no matter what and no matter how many miles apart we are, we're there for each other. My other tribes were short term, starting with a brownie tribe, the little Girl Scouts, they called us. This was short lived but fun. I'd get dropped off in my cute little brown uniform and go inside a nice lady's home. My mom would just drop me off and go for a ride and then come back. She was not feeling very well, and so it was a very hard thing for her to bring me, and I knew it and I felt bad. But we would go in the house and eat something and make a craft, or maybe make cookies. Mom was not well, and I knew it, and that added to me and the trouble of going to that added to the trouble of her taking me there. So soon that tribe was over, and it was really okay because I didn't want Mom to be sad or suffer. Then my next tribe was very special to me. It was a ballet class. I was invited by the teacher from the community class put on by the New Orleans Recreation Department to join her personal studio class. It was such a wonderful surprise. She believed in me. I couldn't believe it. She actually thought I could do something and dance at her studio. I asked my daddy, and he said yes, and he said he would take me. So every week, Daddy would take me to my ballet class with my little pink leotard and my stockings and my little shoes, and off we would go. It was like a magical trip. Daddy would wait in the car in the peace and quiet, and he said it was so wonderful to be there. And I knew he was really enjoying it. Mom was at home with the other four kids, and there we were all alone. He and I afterwards would go for a snowball. My invitation to join this teacher's private studio made me feel wanted. It made me feel like I wasn't a stranger anymore, even though I was really scared to be there. I went at her invitation, so I was wanted, and that mattered to me. She thought I could dance, but the question became, what did I think? Did I think I could dance? Well, not yet, but in time I would, and it was a good experience. What a wonderful tribe that was.
All right. Great introduction to what made you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Barbara, how about you? What do you have?
I come from a long line of some independent women. Never married, some never married for one reason or another, but all led full lives. One grandmother almost graduated from med school in the early 1920s. Two great aunts entertained the troops in Paris in World War I with the Red Cross and traveled the globe when they were not teaching. Their boyfriends died in the war. One grandmother was a too shy vocalist who graduated from Oberlin and performed in Carnegie Hall. Flash forward to the 70s, and I came to New York wanting to be a producer in advertising. No one said no. Perhaps not truly encouraged, but the independence, the career girl acceptance of the time led me to be too often the only woman at the table. I was working in a well-known agency on well-known products. I had a headache that big and got a call from an ex-boyfriend. He said his friend Jennifer was moving and couldn't take all her animals, and wouldn't I please take her cat? He said to me, "You need a cat." I don't know what possessed me to say yes, but Claire apparently arrived in a limousine with a case of designer cat food. My dear neighbor took delivery for me as I was in a meeting. Coming home that night, I was faced with this white ball of fur. and we loved each other until she died in my arms 10 years later. What I didn't know was that some think of that as a cliche, as something horrible. And yes, I still am a childless cat lady.
All right.
I'm with you.
Barbara has some support for her protest poem.
Don't have
Dar,
a cat anymore.
how about you? What do you have for us?
I have one that has a few profanities in it.
Really? Well, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
And it's the prompt was a tribe, right? And it's about the in crowd. Skidding into Hollywood, I slid into first base right on my ass. I had only one contact from the past and one movie star's phone number in my pocket who I didn't dare call. $70 to my name, which didn't go so far as a week, even in 1976. I slipped out of a Me Too faux pas with a psychiatrist to the stars, twice plus my age, and barely slipped away with a name and a phone number scratched on a piece of paper. A torn piece of paper, no less. Mr. Old Shrink, who knew everybody and their secrets, told me I had no currency now that I was out of the San Francisco dance scene and down in the big city of Los Angeles. Thanks, Sydney. I feel better now, I thought. You don't know your place here, he lectured after I barricaded the door to my room that night in Palm Springs, sitting vigil most of the night, fearing his hunger and lust for my very young body. You only have your youth and beauty to trade here, Darlene. You don't have any money. You don't have a father. You don't have anything. Dancers are a dime a dozen, but you have your sexuality. Play your cards and give it up sometimes. You'll get nowhere if you stay this stingy. Thanks for the advice, Sydney. I felt sad and blown away, tucked the paper in my empty pocket, begged for bus fare, and rode back to LA, exiting at the corner of Hollywood and Vine. It was the only place I thought to exit as the tedious and hot, stinky ride from the desert entered Hollywood proper. A red phone booth smelling of piss and stale breath was my destination. I dropped a dime into the small slot and called the name on the white paper. Paula, I asked, as she miraculously answered. Hey, I was told you sometimes rented a room to aspiring actresses. And within an hour, she pulled up in a dinky old car, peeked her head out, and I jumped right into the in crowd. Her boyfriend being the famous Bob Rafelson, the golden egg cracked wide open. I was invited into the coolest tribe in Hollywood, and I didn't have to put out. Fuck Sydney, right? I left that whole part out.
Thus, Paul Pasquarella and the rest of
That's
that
how I
crowd.
met all of those.
That's how you met all of those characters. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, some of them are still around.
Oh, I know. I know.
Mary, how about you?
I'm going to do the one on food,
Okay.
liver and onions. I don't want to write about it, but it pulls me to it. I'm back at the house again, in the kitchen. I see my mother at the stove. She always wore an apron. Seldom do I remember her talking to us as she cooked. I do remember my father kissing her when he came home from work. I don't remember any other time. Once a month, my mother would saute onions and place a calf's liver in the cast iron skillet. The aroma always caught me when I walked in the door. The cooked liver was dense, beefy in an odd way, as though nature might suggest you shouldn't eat it. But we had to, all of it, and there was a reason. all part of a healthy diet. And iron for my anemic but high energy mother, once a month like clockwork. Just like a menstrual cycle, were they related? But we had to eat something to a child that was overwhelmingly distasteful beyond a reasonable expectation. It was a condition of captivity, a condition of dependent childhood, a requirement against our will. The requirements were many. No anger, good grades, stay out of the way.
All right. No anger, good grades, stay out of the way. But were you free? Were you happy? The question is absurd. Had there anything been wrong, we should certainly have heard. Dragon Rose, what do you have?
I'm going to read this one about the catchphrase.
Okay. Could you project just a little bit so the mic will
Yeah,
let
can
us?
you hear me now?
We're good. Thank you very much.
I'm going to read this one about the catchphrase, even though it's still pretty messy. But we be weaving. We all said it together at the end of the Zoom meeting. It happened at once out of each of our mouths by surprise, and we giggled. A new catchphrase was born amongst us just like that. We, the Affinity and Belonging Camp organizers, shorthand, AB crew, we were meeting post-Trump election, second term, to process all our feels. We spoke of the ways we plan to weave together oasis camps, safe spaces for us with cuddle parties and sharing circles and dances around fires and song, song, song. Hope-making spaces, life-saving spaces. No, you're not alone. Even if the anti-trans propaganda has the bounty hunters and bullies at your door, we be weaving means we be assisting trans folk with relocations to states like Massachusetts and Colorado, refugee states. Can you believe we need refugee states for our own citizens now? Bizarre. But I think of this word weaving and the way it means we know we are a web, a love ecosystem, the ways we know we are knitting a tapestry of roots underground. We be weaving means we be mycelial network. That's what we mean when we say this to ourselves. We be intertwining and aligning dreams and keeping each other hugged close and safe. We be spontaneously arriving at our haven worlds in tandem. Well, not so spontaneously, because the weaving implies a continued threading, an in and out pattern of mandala, a day in, day out return, week after week. How you doing, Harper? Keeping my head up. And you, Indigo? I just had a good cry, but you know, I feel better now.
All right. Thank you all for your readings. I do want to suggest at some point try this. As I listen to the pieces, I jot down words that pop so that I have words from each piece under everybody's name. I don't know what you can do with that, but voila, there's a whole list based on what you said. Before we close, just to let you know, we have the Surf the Storm prompt, which the rules are written and unwritten. The rules are part of what order our lives. We stop at the stop sign, and Mary said she likes it when people stop at the stop sign. Be interesting to hear a piece on what you do and how you deal with it when somebody doesn't follow the rules at the stop sign. Do you get enraged or do you forgive them? We don't know. Nice to hear that. So this is about thinking about rules and what kind of rules you follow, what kind of rules, how rules affect you, how you make up rules that you follow for yourself, and how you do something with them. So here's the exercise. After you think about your rules a bit, this is what I want you to do, or Allegra and I both want you to do. This is a 10-minute time writing. That was when I did something to the rules. Okay, so you have the rules or the rule, whatever that rule is. That was when I broke the rule, massaged the rule, rewrote the rule, jettisoned the rule, invented the rule, shattered the rule, made fun of the rule. So do one or more 10-minute time writings on what you did with the rule. That was when I followed the rules. And how did that work out for you? Truth is, we tend to think we're very proud of ourselves because I break through. I'm a rule breaker. But most people, we follow the rules. That's how we are able to survive. Your body follows the rules. If you didn't take a breath, which is a rule of the body, you might not survive. Uh, I follow the rules. When I go to the corner, I look both ways before I cross the road. Nice rule. Why is it good? Works well. In Ireland, I've been nearly hit many times because I looked the wrong way. In Paris, for some reason, the bicycle lane goes the wrong way down the road, and people are hit all the time by bicycles because they walk out in front because they look the wrong way. They don't even know the rule has been broken. They're following a rule that no longer works for them because somebody decided a new rule existed that they didn't know about. Okay, so what do you do with rules? So that's your assignment. We have just a few minutes to go. So I want to thank you all for showing up. Sue's dog is here doing the work as well. And I know there are some cats lurking about. And so we've covered today's lessons. And you are now in the 6th class, and we've finished that, and we're moving on to the 7th one. So today is social ease. So you've looked at the ways that you interact socially. There's a lot that you could build out on this. You could spend an entire week doing what Dragon Rose is doing. She's giving herself a month or two of just artistic work. So you can spend all week just working on these ideas, breaking the rules. How do you interact socially? What are some of the shibboleths that you've noticed that are not true, and yet everybody agrees that they are true? And so next week, we're going to be looking at the tender spots. What's in there that, what's tender about you? How does that stir you up? And also read the essay, Write Without Attachment. It's just a nice little essay that Allegra and I managed to put together. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this time together. Does anybody have any comments you'd like to make? We're a couple of minutes away from the bottom of our 3rd hour. So anything you'd like to say before you go? Inspire us or make a comment?
I loved Dragon Rose's little essay she did at the end about we be weaving. So I'm going to be weaving. I'm going to take that and
We be
be
weaving
something.
That's good. Years ago, yeah, when I was traveling years ago in down in Louisiana, I don't remember, Lafayette, Louisiana, an advertising agency, because there was a big depression going on, advertising agency said, they came up with this phrase which they put all over town: we believe in Lafayette. And within a day, everybody says, yeah, we believe in Lafayette too. We be weaving. When you said we be weaving, I remembered that story. So yay for you, Dragon Rose. Sue liked it. Anything else, my friends, before we go?
I was going to say, like, I really, really, really love how detailed everyone gets, like really, really all those nitty-gritty details. And I feel like I have a hard time with that. And I've been trying to work on that, like in the times in between, but it just doesn't seem to be when I'm spontaneously writing the way I organically flow, like having all those, it's like my mind isn't thinking those specific details. I'm sure it's like a muscle you have to train, but I really think in abstractions, I think a lot. And I want to work on getting more nitty gritty detailed. Like everyone's pieces are so specific and visual.
I think that piece about the soup was incredibly specific and visual. I mean, it couldn't be more so.
Mhm.
I mean, you could maybe describe what the soup looked like, you know.
Oh, but that whole thing of doing this with my mouth
Yeah, I mean, it was
before,
so visual.
I don't know how
So
many of that, what, whew.
it couldn't be more specific. I mean, it was so bang on.
Yeah. And that one detail of putting it in my mouth and wallowing it around includes your tongue, your teeth, your gums, your lips, your taste, your emotions, which I felt
Mhm.
because it was in my
Yeah.
mouth
Mm.
Yeah.
and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I
So,
didn't like.
I'll tell you, Dragon Rose, if you want to add details to your work, please stay on the vibe you're on because it's fantastic. Do not try to change that initial vibe. If you do get a couple of paragraphs and you think, well, I'd like to edit these, I'd like to revise it, where could I put some details in and what kind of details could I include in the revision? Then stick them in, see it, and then read it out loud and see if it works. And often the details end up being more like I'm editorializing, trying to help Nave understand what it felt like to have all that soup in my mouth when you don't have to do that at all. I'm like, dragging as you speak. But you can play around with that. And then when you read that out loud, which is always a good thing to do, it will sound, that's your authenticity meter, that reading aloud. You go, oh, that sounds pretty good. That lands well. That works in the breath. Then that's an indication to leave it in. But if it doesn't work, take it out. Anything else?
I think it's voices, isn't it? Knowing your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has such distinct voices here,
Exactly. Yeah,
you know. Yeah. And so it's just your unique voice.
yeah.
And
Yes.
you are specific, just in a different way, in your way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everybody,
Yeah.
Mary and Wendy and Barbara, I loved your cat lady too. I wasn't just meaning I loved Dragon Roses, but it was the last one, and it was so poignant because this election has been so hard, and so I loved your cat lady, and I think we're all just exploring our voices and exploring our, you're giving us a way, Nave, to dig in deeper. And maybe I just thought of this and take it or leave it, but maybe you could describe your father, because weren't you going to get spanked by him? So it would sort of be nice to see, maybe as the kids, you saw he looked like a giant to you parading around the table. I don't know, just getting specific perhaps with that character, just an idea, things like that you could play around with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I saw him. I saw him.
Me too. I didn't have any. Yeah, but
Yeah, I saw his hand.
You can build this
Saw
out.
his hand.
You can build this out. And like I say, next time, I really encourage you to try this list. I mean, I just write the words down as each person is reading, and because
President, do you think we can get a hostage deal?
because I'm listening for the words, just whatever comes, like Sue, chips, salt, crown, smell, chippy, Katie, tumble, words, new, chocolate, picture, Martin, hands, woman, evidence, kidnap, Wendy, dad, drop, cookies, sad, dance, pink, Barbara, full, ants, Red Cross, animals, designer, fur, Dar, Hollywood, ass, age away, phone. Let's see. Mary, house, stove, kiss, time, onions, Dragon Rose, end, once, belonging, trans, state, bizarre, roots. And that's verbatim, right out of your text. But as I'm listening and writing those down, it focuses, it's like having a magnet pull me toward the work. It's really interesting. And then you could write all sorts of stuff from this list, as you know how to do already. So I'm going back to the original kaleidoscoping of the mind by letting my mind kaleidoscope around and around by using form. This is tight form. form, comes out of the kaleidoscope and keeps me tied to the energy of what you're saying as much as to the writing.
Mm.
Just a little technique that I enjoy doing.
Cool.
And on that note, anything else to close? If not, it's 9:30 in the evening where Barbara is, and it's 9:35. 8:30 in the evening where Barbara is, and 9:35 here, and
5:30 in LA.
5:30 in LA. So wherever you are in the world, stay true to the cause. Come back next week. I'll post this video and not be such a bum, and I'll see you soon. Okay, thank you. Bye, everybody. Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.